Welcome to the Defense and Aerospace Report. I'm Vago Muradian here at the Navy League's annual Sea Airspace Conference and Trade Show outside Washington, D.C. in National Harbor, Maryland, where our coverage is sponsored by Fincantieri, Huntington Ingalls Industries, and Leonardo DRS. And we're here with one of the stars of the show, Hondo Geurts, the Navy's acquisition executive. Sir, thanks very much for making time for us. We saw you at West not very long ago in sunny San Diego. I want to talk to you about small businesses this time. You just finished a Facebook Live event talking to small business folks. Talk to us a little bit about your strategy on harnessing small businesses, because when everybody talks about innovation, you experienced that firsthand when you were at U.S. Special Operations Command and you were the acquisition executive there, about the sheer amount of innovation you could tap very, very easily. And you're looking to build an agile organization. We talked to you about that. We talked to Admiral Dave Johnson, your deputy, about that also, about how to get into these more agile cycles. Talk to us about the strategy you're bringing to better engage small businesses.
Small business already doing great work for the Navy. Last year they did over $13 billion of work where we contacted directly with small business. So the first thing is, I was very proud that the Navy's already doing a lot of work with smalls, because they bring innovation, they bring agility, they bring pivot speed to the table. But I think there's more we can do. And the big piece of that is, how do we set up acquisition programs to fully leverage their capabilities? There's some programs where they're best positioned to do it. There's other programs where larger companies are best positioned to use them as a support. And to that effect, 2 recent ship awards have gone directly to small businesses. So sometimes we think of small businesses only as little niche pieces or algorithms or a piece of software. No, they're building Navy ships right now. So our 2 big awards were potential hundreds of millions of dollars direct to small business.
And which firms were those 2, just to give people sort of a sense?
They're down in the southern states, Gulf states. So it's for our LC-1000 ship, and then the other one for one of our tug support vessels. And so again, they're going to be the lead ship designer, and then if success, we'll build more ships out of them. So that's just one example. So when we think of industrial base, it's across the whole spectrum: smalls, mediums, and larges. And then what I would say in the technology area, certainly, smalls really play a prominent role. And what we've got to do in the Navy is make sure we can clearly communicate to them what our needs are, and do a really good job so they can understand, especially if they've never done business with us, understand what we're looking for, and then look at our business processes to reduce that friction that working with the government can present sometimes. And how do we become a supplier of choice or customer of choice, depending on how you look at it, for those small businesses.
How do you gauge the health of the industrial base? There was a lot of discussion about that. I know that Eric Tuning at Manufacturing Industrial Base Policy is looking at that. The last administration did that as well, to try to take a look at where are all the tiers. There are a lot of small businesses that do a lot of very, very core things, some of them as a single source supplier. Talk to us a little bit about how you're gauging the health of the industrial base that services your needs.
Sure. So when I think industrial base, it's more than just the big shipyards. They're obviously a big key piece of that, but those shipyards don't work if we don't have the supply base and tiers 2, 3, and 4 supplying them. So one of our big actions as we look at this industrial base is look across the entire base. For our nuclear ship design, we've looked at where do we have common suppliers across our carriers and attack subs and boomers, and really pay a lot of attention to those suppliers. And if there's a case where we need to bolster up that, how do we bolster up that supply base? Congress in 2018 was very supportive on the submarine business of funding some programs specifically targeted to bolster that supply base up. Because again, we are only as effective as the supply base behind us. And we've got to look at that across the board.
What are some of the things that concerns you, and what are capabilities that you're eager to shore up?
I think depth, right? So if you only have one single supplier, that can be a problem. Or how do we get our needs out there on a consistent basis? So if a supplier doesn't know what we need to build in the next 2 or 3 or 4 years, it's hard for them to plan for it. And then how do we link up maintenance and what the supplies we need for maintenance and operating the fleet with what the supplies we need for building a fleet? And if we can better synchronize how we forecast that and procure that, that'll allow our suppliers then to see that steady stream of need, and then they can drive cost out and be more effective because they understand what the Navy needs. We haven't always been great about looking long-term and informing those suppliers across the board of what our needs are.
Let me ask you sort of a broader
Mhm.
sort of industrial base, issue, right? It deals a little bit with the big shipyards, but the Navy's challenge always has been that not having enough work for all of the shipyards that it did, and then when it did have enough work, how to level load that to make
Mhm.
sure that all of these key facilities, because if you look at it, the nation has 6 major shipyards, but each one of them do key things. There were 2 new entrants in it for the 2 LCS ships, but then the historic guys, Newport News, Bath Iron Works, Electric Boat, and then NASCO, and then down in Pascagoula is of course another kind of critical capability. How how big of a challenge is it to make sure that the right work loading is in the right places? If you look at Bath Iron Works, always an innovator, great engineering company, but once those 2 DDG-1000s are completed, the last 2 of them, there's a little bit of a gap in workload at that yard, which really was, I remember being out there. It was postage stamp size and churning out these destroyers at a really big rate. Talk to us a little bit about, perhaps maybe on the Bath side, but sort of more broadly, the challenge of juggling, getting the right thing. You don't want to sort of have an industrial welfare state. Talk to us a little bit about the challenges of making sure that you get this right.
Yeah, I think, without going into any of the specifics, I would say broadly, if you looked at our 355 ship build plan, it was largely about the industrial base. That's the first long-ranging ship plan I think that I can recall that actually focused on the industrial base as one of the key pieces there. We always knew it, but we didn't always look at it systemically. So we're always looking at the base. But to the point of small business, it is a shipyard and then a lot more. And so I think as you look at our future shipbuilding plans, we're going to continue to even look at that further beyond just the industrial base. It's industrial supply, it's small businesses, it's parts and all that. Because again, that is a element of our national security, and understanding and working with and fully leveraging an industrial base is key, I think, to the Navy's future success.
Every week on my podcast, one issue that comes
Yeah.
up is tariffs, potential trade wars, and how that could potentially impact steel flows, technology flows. You're in the business of both steel and technology flows from all around the world. Talk to us a little bit. Is there going to be more of a financial impact at all on the Navy, given the Navy is a very, very big steel user?
Yeah. So again, back to your first point, we're always looking at our supply base. That's both raw material and all of our suppliers. The good news is for American shipbuilding, those are all built in America with American steel. So I don't see that as a direct issue for us. But as the tariff situation gets fully understood and we work through, our job, or my job, is to always be on eye of that and understand what the impacts are.
Hanno, always
Yep.
a pleasure, sir.
Good to
Really
see you.
enjoyed it.
Yep,
and
thanks.
Look forward to talking to you again.
Yeah, as always, thanks, Vago.